I grew up in Kentucky, and occasionally my parents would take me and my younger sister to this attraction that included caves. There was an hour-long tour with a tour guide you could go on, and I have some fond memories of that as a kid. However, one trek through the cave was downright terrifying. It was a sticky summer day, the kind where the heat clings to your skin, so my family decided to visit the cave to cool off. I was 12, old enough to think I was above getting excited about rocks, but young enough to still tag along without much protest. My sister, Emily, was 8 and bursting with curiosity. She'd point at every stalactite and stalagmite, firing off questions at the tour guide like a machine gun. The cave smelled damp and earthy, and the air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on us as we descended. The tour started normally. Our guide, a wiry guy with a thick Kentucky drawl, led us through the winding passages of the cave, pointing out formations that looked like frozen waterfalls. He'd pause to tell us bits of history, like how miners once worked these tunnels and how bats had made it their home for centuries. At one point, he gathered us in a massive chamber, switched off the lights, and let the darkness swallow us whole. Emily grabbed my arm, her nails digging in, but I could hear the grin in her voice when she whispered, "This is so cool." I rolled my eyes, even though no one could see me. The lights flicked back on, and we kept going. That's when I noticed Emily lagging behind, her head tilted toward the ground. I followed her gaze and saw it, a small bat, its wings folded tight, lying motionless on the cave floor. She took a step toward it, eyes wide with wonder. "Don't," I hissed, grabbing her wrist. "It might have rabies or something." The guide chimed in, explaining how bats sometimes get confused and crash, but we should steer clear. Emily pouted, but she stayed put. We moved deeper into the cave, the walls narrowing around us, when I realized Emily wasn't beside me anymore. I glanced back and saw her slipping away, back toward the bat. "I'll get her," I muttered to my parents, jogging after her before they could argue. When I caught up, she was crouched next to the bat again. It twitched feebly, a tiny shudder running through its body. "Look, it's alive," she said, her voice echoing faintly. "Emily, we need to go back, the group's moving on." "But it needs help," she insisted, her lip trembling. "We can't do anything for it, come on." I tugged her arm, and she reluctantly stood. We tried to retrace our steps, but the tunnel we'd come through didn't look right. The walls were tighter and the ceiling lower. "This isn't the way," I said, my stomach twisting. Emily's voice was small. "Where are we?" "I think we're lost," I admitted, forcing my tone to stay steady. I had a cheap flashlight from the gift shop in my pocket, its weak beam barely cutting through the gloom. We started walking, hoping to find the tour path, but every turn led to more of the same, cold stone, dripping water, and shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. After what felt like forever, though it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes, we heard something. It was a faint rustling, like dry leaves skittering across pavement, mixed with soft, high-pitched squeaks. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered, pressing closer to me. "It's just echoes," I said, but my pulse was starting to climb. Then we stumbled into a small chamber, and my flashlight caught something strange. The walls were covered in deep scratch marks, like someone, or something, had clawed out the rock. A few feet away, we found what looked like an abandoned campsite, a tattered sleeping bag, a rusted lantern, and a couple of dented cans, all coated in a thick layer of dust. "Who do you think was here?" Emily asked, her voice barely audible. "Maybe old miners," I said, but the words felt hollow. The air in here was colder and heavier, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. A scraping sound echoed behind us, sharp and deliberate, like nails on stone. We froze, my flashlight trembling in my hand. Then it happened. A deafening rush of wings erupted from a crevice in the wall, and a swarm of bats poured out, their screeches bouncing off the cave like a living nightmare. We screamed, dropping to the ground as they surged around us, their tiny bodies brushing my arms and my face. I swung the flashlight wildly, and it slipped from my sweaty grip, smashing against the rock. The light died, and the darkness crashed in. "Emily," I yelled, grabbing her hand. Her breathing was fast and shallow, matching mine. "We've got to move." We stumbled forward, blind, hands scraping along the slimy walls. The bats had settled, but their squeaks still filled the air, a constant reminder of the chaos we'd escaped. Or so I thought. As we groped our way through the tunnel, a new sound stopped me cold, a low, guttural growl rolling up from the blackness behind us. "What was that?" Emily whimpered, her fingers digging into my palm. "I don't know, but keep going." My voice cracked, my mind racing with images of bears, mountain lions, or worse, things that didn't have names. The growl came again, closer this time, and I swore I felt something brush past my leg, cold and rough. We staggered on, my heart slamming against my ribs, until my hand hit something solid and metallic, a railing. "Emily, this is the tour path," I gasped. We followed it, the growling fading but never quite gone, until a faint glow appeared ahead. Voices called out, and suddenly flashlights blinded us. "There they are!" someone shouted. It was the tour group, my parents at the front, their faces pale with relief and fury. They pulled us into bone-crushing hugs, yelling about how stupid we'd been to wander off, but I barely heard them. My eyes kept darting back to the tunnel. As we shuffled toward the exit, the cave's mouth yawning ahead, I risked one last look into the dark. That's when I saw them, two glowing eyes low to the ground, staring right at me. They blinked once, and then vanished. We made it out, and life went on, but that day stuck with me. Years later, I looked up stories about that cave. There were rumors, missing hikers, strange noises, even whispers of something living deep inside, something the bats avoided. I don't know what was down there with us, and I don't want to. Some things are better left buried in the dark. In 5th grade, we each had to give a presentation on an animal, and I chose a bat. I was obsessed with them for a while as a kid, though looking back, I'm not sure why. I don't think it was even because of Batman. I literally just like bats. There was something about their leathery wings, their silent flight, and the way they thrived in the dark that drew me in. I'd spend hours reading about them, how they used echolocation, how some drank blood, and how they'd hang upside down in caves like little shadowed sentinels. For my presentation, I even made a model of a bat out of clay, painted it black, and proudly told the class that bats could live right under our noses without us even knowing. My teacher gave me an A, and my classmates thought I was weird, but I didn't care. Bats were just my thing. That obsession faded as I got older, buried under the usual teenage distractions, video games, school, and girls. By the time I was 16, I barely thought about bats anymore. That is, until the summer my family moved to a small town called Harrow's End. It was one of those places where everyone knew everyone, and the houses were old, creaky, and spaced too far apart. Our new house was a fixer-upper, a 2-story relic with a sagging porch and an attic my dad swore he'd turned into a storage space. The first night, I heard it, a faint scratching overhead, like nails on wood. I figured it was mice or squirrels. Old houses have noises, right? A week later, I was home alone. My parents had gone to some town meeting, leaving me with a pizza and a horror movie marathon. The scratching started again, louder this time, coming from the attic. I paused the TV, the silence of the house pressing in around me. It wasn't just scratching now, it was a fluttering, a rustling, like dozens of tiny wings. My heart gave a little jolt. Bats! I knew that sound from all the documentaries I'd watched as a kid. Part of me was curious, the old obsession flickering back to life. The rest of me wanted to stay right where I was. But the fluttering didn't stop, and soon I heard something else. A low, rhythmic thumping, like something heavy shifting up there. I grabbed a flashlight and a broom from the kitchen, telling myself I'd just take a quick look. The attic hatch was in the upstairs hallway, a square panel with a pull string. I tugged it down, and a rickety ladder unfolded with a groan. Dust drifted down, catching in the beam of my flashlight. The air smelled stale, earthy, and faintly sour, like something alive had been up there too long. I climbed the ladder, each step creaking under my weight, until my head poked into the attic. The space was bigger than I'd expected, a maze of beams and shadows stretching into the dark. My flashlight swept across insulation, old boxes, and there in the corner, a cluster of small dark shapes clinging to the rafters. They were bats. Dozens of them, their wings folded tight, their eyes glinting like tiny red embers in the light. I froze, half awed and half nervous. They didn't move, instead they just stared, and for a moment I felt like that 5th grade kid again, marveling at their strangeness. Then the thumping started again. It wasn't coming from the bats, it was deeper in the attic, behind a pile of mildewed cardboard boxes. My curiosity outweighed my common sense, and I crept forward, ducking under beams, the broom clutched like a weapon. The bats twitched as I passed, their wings rustling faintly. I reached the boxes and shoved them aside, revealing a small warped door set into the wall. It was barely 3 feet high, its paint peeling, a rusted padlock hanging loose from the latch. The thumping stopped, replaced by a sound I couldn't place, a wet, rasping noise, like someone struggling to breathe. I know I shouldn't have opened that door, I know that now, but I did anyway. I pried the padlock off with a broom handle and swung the door open, shining my flashlight inside. The beam landed on something big, hunched, and covered in matted fur. It wasn't a bat, not exactly. It was larger, like the size of a dog, with wings that dragged on the floor and a face that was all wrong. Too many teeth, too many eyes, glistening in the light. It turned towards me, slow and deliberate, and let out a screech that shook the attic. Behind me, the bats exploded into motion, swarming the air, their wings brushing my face, my arms, and my neck. I stumbled back, dropping the flashlight, the broom clattering uselessly to the floor. The thing in the door didn't move, but the bats did, diving at me, their claws snagging my shirt and my hair. I ran, tripping over boxes, slamming into beams, the attic a chaos of wings and shrieks. I made it to the ladder and half fell, half climbed down, yanking the hatch shut behind me. The thumping started again, louder and closer, like that thing was pressing against the wood. I didn't wait for my parents. I grabbed my bike and pedaled to the gas station a mile away, my lungs burning and my skin crawling with the memory of those wings. When my parents got home, I told them everything. They didn't believe me, and they said it was just bats and an overactive imagination. My dad did go up the next day with an exterminator. They found the bat, sure, but no door and no creature, just a blank wall where I'd seen it. The exterminator sealed the attic vents, and as far as my parents were concerned, that was that. But I know what I saw, and ever since that night, I hear them. Not just in the house, but everywhere. The flutter of wings in the trees outside my window, the scratch of claws when I'm alone in my room. Last week, I woke up to a shadow on my ceiling, a shape with too many eyes staring down at me. It was gone when I turned on the light, but I found a single bat wing, small, leathery, and torn, on my pillow. I don't know what's real anymore, or if something followed me out of that attic. All I know is, I'm never going up there again. I was never really into college parties, though I went to a couple throughout my 4 years. One party completely changed my life though, and you're about to hear why. It was Halloween during my sophomore year at college. My buddy Ryan wouldn't stop nagging me to go to this off-campus costume party. I wasn't into the whole scene, which included loud music, drunk strangers, and the usual chaos, but he wore me down. "Come on, Jake," he said. "You can finally wear that Batman costume you've been obsessed with since high school." He did have a point. I'd always loved Batman, so I rented a decent costume, complete with a cape and cowl, and tagged along. I felt a little excited, but mostly ridiculous. The party was at some senior's house, a creaky old place on the edge of town with peeling paint and a sagging porch. Inside, it was a mess of strobe lights, thumping bass, and people in costumes ranging from clever to barely there. I grabbed a soda and lingered near the wall, watching the crowd, when I saw her. She was dressed as Catwoman, black leather bodysuit, mask and ears, and she was stunning. Not just hot, but magnetic, with dark hair spilling over her shoulders and these piercing hazel eyes that locked onto mine across the room. She walked over, dodging a guy in a sloppy vampire cape, and stopped right in front of me. "Well, well," she said, her voice low and playful. "The Dark Knight himself. I'm impressed." She flashed a smile that made my stomach flip. Thanks," I stammered, adjusting my mask. "I'm Jake. You're Catwoman, obviously. Nice costume." "I'm Lily," she said, leaning closer. "And I'd say we're a pretty good match, wouldn't you?" Her confidence threw me off, but I played along, and soon we were talking like we'd known each other forever. She was a junior, studying environmental science, and had this infectious laugh that cut through the party noise. We danced and flirted, and by the end of the night, I had her number scribbled on a napkin. I left the party buzzing, replaying every word she'd said. We started dating a week later. Lily was incredible, funny and sweet, and genuinely kind. She'd surprise me with coffee before class, or drag me to the local nature preserve to watch the sunset. She had this thing for bats, too. "They're amazing," she said, her eyes lighting up. "They navigate in total darkness, just by sound. Isn't that wild?" I'd nod, charmed by her passion, even if I didn't exactly get it. Things moved fast. Within a year, we were serious, and 2 years after that, I proposed. We got married in a quiet ceremony by the lake, and settled into a little house near the woods. Life was perfect, or so I thought. It started small. Lily would wake up at odd hours, standing by the bedroom window, staring into the night. I'd ask if she was okay, and she'd smile, saying she couldn't sleep, and then crawl back into bed. But then I started hearing noises, soft, leathery flutters, like wings brushing against the house. One night, I caught her outside, barefoot in the grass, her head tilted up as bats swooped overhead. "They're just saying hi," she said when I asked, laughing it off. I brushed it aside, figuring it was her quirky love for wildlife. But then came the night I'll never forget. I woke up around 3 a.m. to an empty bed and a faint scratching sound. It was coming from the attic. Heart pounding, I grabbed a flashlight and climbed the narrow stairs, the air growing colder with each step. I pushed open the attic door, and my breath caught. Dozens of bats clung to the rafters, their tiny eyes glinting in the beam of light. And there was Lily, standing in the center, her arms raised, whispering something I couldn't make out. The bats twitched and chittered, like they were listening. "Lily?" I croaked, my voice barely audible over the rustling wings. She turned slowly, and her eyes, they were pitch black. It was as if ink had swallowed them whole. "Jake," she said, her voice calm but distant. "You weren't supposed to see this yet." "See what?" I stepped back, the flashlight shaking in my hand. "What's happening?" She lowered her arms, and the bats stilled. "I've always been connected to them," she said. "It's in my blood. My family, we've had this gift for generations. I didn't want to scare you." "Gift?" I choked out. "Lily, this isn't a gift. This is insane." Her face softened, and she took a step toward me. "I know it looks bad, but I can control it. I've been hiding it from you because I didn't want to lose you. But I'm still me, Jake. I'm still the girl you met at that party." The bats shifted, their wings rustling like dry leaves, and I wanted to run. But I looked at her, really looked, and saw the Lily I loved, scared and vulnerable beneath whatever this was. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I was afraid you'd leave," she whispered. "I love you too much for that." I didn't know what to do, but I loved her too, so I stayed. Over the next few weeks, she explained everything, how her family had some ancient tie to bats, and how she could hear them, sense them, even influence them sometimes. It wasn't always under control, though. Once, she admitted, a swarm had trashed her childhood home when she got upset. That's why she kept it buried, until now. One night, though, it went too far. I woke to the bedroom windows rattling, bats slamming against the glass, their screeches piercing the silence. Lily was thrashing in her sleep, muttering, sweat beading on her forehead. I shook her awake, and the noise stopped instantly, the bats scattering into the night. "They're tied to me," she gasped, clutching my arm. "When I'm stressed, they feel it." That was it. I knew I couldn't live like this, waiting for the next nightmare. But I couldn't leave her either. So we made a plan. She'd heard rumors of a family ritual, something her grandmother mentioned, to sever the connection. We dug through old journals in her mom's basement and found a faded page about a cleansing under a full moon, using salt and some weird chant. It sounded crazy, but we were desperate. On the next full moon, we went deep into the woods behind our house. Lily drew a circle in the dirt, sprinkled salt, and started the chant, her voice trembling. I stood watch, flashlight in hand, as the air grew heavy. Then they came, hundreds of bats pouring from the trees, swirling around us like a tornado. I yelled for her to stop, but she kept going, her words rising over the chaos. Suddenly, a sharp wind cut through, and the bats dropped, not dead, just dazed, before flapping away into the dark. Lily collapsed, and I caught her. Her eyes were hazel again, bright and clear. "It's gone," she breathed, tears streaming down her face. "I can feel it. They're gone." From that night on, the bats stayed away. No more flutters, and no more midnight whispers. We fixed up the house, started a family, and built a life together, happy, normal, the way we'd always wanted. Sometimes, though, when the wind picks up, I catch her glancing at the sky, a flicker of something in her eyes. She swears it's over, and I believe her. But late at night, when I hear a faint rustle outside, I wonder if they're really gone, or if they're just waiting.